tossed from a moving wagon into a ravine. A cowboy climbed down and gave her shelter. The rope was still tied to my saddle horn when I heard it. Not a scream you can explain away, an animal, a hawk, the wind coming wrong through a canyon neck. What I heard was different. It was the sound of something heavy and alive hitting brush, hitting rock, then going quiet in a way that wasn't right. The kind of quiet that follows a thing that should have made more noise. I'd been trailing a stray heifer along the rimrock above Gila Creek for the better part of an hour. Sun was already dropping behind the sangers, painting everything that copper-red color that makes the whole country look like it's on fire. I had maybe 40 minutes of useful light left, and the heifer was still nowhere I could put a rope on her. I pulled up, listened. Nothing, wind, my horse blowing through his nose. Then down below the rim, something moved in the scrub oak. Not wind, not an animal shaking brush to get through, something deliberate, something trying. I got down and walked to the edge and looked. There was a woman in the ravine. She was maybe 30 feet down, laid up against a boulder the size of a wagon box, and she was trying to push herself upright with one arm. The other arm she wasn't using at all. Her dress was torn from the shoulder across the left side, and there was blood on her face, not a lot but enough to show dark against the skin in that last of the light. She had dark hair that had come mostly loose from whatever she'd had it pinned in, and it was tangled with leaves and dust. I stood there a second longer than I should have. I'm not sure what I was deciding. Maybe I wasn't deciding anything, and it just took that long for my legs to understand what my eyes were telling them. I went back to my horse, uncoiled the rope from the horn, tied one end to a scrub pine that looked like it might hold, dropped the other end over the edge, and went down. The rock face wasn't clean. It was tilted shale and loose dirt, and I had to pick every foothold, and twice the rope swung me sideways into the rock, and I took it on my shoulder and my hip. By the time I got down to her, the light was changing fast, and I could hear the creek somewhere in the dark below us, closer than I would have liked. She had stopped trying to get up. She was watching me come down. I crouched next to her, and she didn't flinch or pull away, which told me she was either calm by nature or she was past the point where flinching helped. "You fall," I said. Stupid question, but it was the first thing that came out. "Pushed," she said. Her voice was level, tired maybe, but level. She said it like she was correcting a mistake in a ledger. I looked her over the way you look at a horse that's taken a bad step, quick and thorough, and without a lot of sentiment. Left arm she was holding close to her body. Collarbone, maybe, or the shoulder. Her right hand was cut across the palm, not deep but dirty. The cut on her face was above her ear. Scalp wounds bleed like the world is ending, and this one had. Her eyes were tracking right, and she wasn't having trouble finding my face, which was good. "Can you stand?" I said. "I haven't tried since I stopped," she said. "I was going to, and then you came down." "All right, I'm going to help you up. Tell me when something hurts bad." I got her up slow. She made a sound once, a sharp, quiet sound through her nose when her left arm moved wrong. She didn't complain about it. She just breathed through it and got her feet under her. "The rope goes back up," I said. "I'll go first, get above, pull you while you climb with the one arm." "It's not going to be easy." She looked at the rock face above us, looked at the rope, looked at me. "All right," she said. I went up first. It took longer going up than coming down, always does, and by the time I got to the rim, the last of the real light was gone, and there was just a gray smear in the west where the sun had been. I wrapped the rope twice around my forearms, braced my boots against the rim lip, and called down. She climbed. I could hear her working, hear the scrape of her boots on the shale, hear her breathing when she got close. Once she slipped and the rope jerked hard and I held it and didn't let it go. She found her footing again. She got up. When she came over the rim, I grabbed her good arm and pulled her the last foot, and she came up, and we both sat there in the dark for a second breathing. My horse was still standing where I'd left him, ground-tied, head down. Patient animal. 7 years I'd had him, and he'd always been that way. I helped her up onto him, and I walked. Wasn't far to my camp. I'd been out 2 nights already working the back range, and had a spot under a sandstone overhang along the creek that I used every fall. 20 minutes walking, maybe. She didn't talk, and I didn't either. I kept one hand on the horse's neck, not holding the reins particularly, just in contact, so I'd feel if something startled him. She sat straight. I noticed that. Straight-backed and still. like she was concentrating on staying aboard by sheer determination rather than balance. At camp, I got the fire going before anything else. Fire first every time on the frontier, light and warmth, and the sight of it steadies people better than talking does. She sat on the bedroll I spread out for her and watched me work, and in the firelight I could see her better. She was maybe 30, strong-looking through the jaw, eyes that were either dark green or dark brown. The fire made it hard to say. The blood on her face had dried. The torn dress was good fabric, not cheap, which didn't necessarily mean anything on a ranch road, but it wasn't nothing either. I had clean water in the canteen, and a flour sack I used for a rag, and I brought those to her. "Your face needs cleaning," I said. "That cut's going to seal wrong if it dries any worse." "I know," she said. "I can do it." I gave her the canteen and the rag, and she cleaned her own face, slow and thorough, without asking for a mirror or any comment on how it looked. She favored the left arm the whole time. When she was done, she wrung out the rag with one hand against her knee and handed both back to me. "Your shoulder," I said. "Collarbone, I think," she said. "I've had it before, same side, different time." "Then you know you can't set it yourself." "No," she said. "You can't set a collarbone, you just hold it still." That was right, I didn't say anything. I had a clean shirt in my saddlebag. I always carried one change, no more, no less, and I tore it into strips and made a sling that held her left arm flat against her chest. She sat very still while I did it. I could smell her hair when I worked close, something clean under the dust and the blood, like creek water, and something faintly like soap. When I was done, she flexed her fingers on the immobilized arm, testing. "That's good," she said. "That's better." I cooked. I had salt pork and cornmeal and dried beans I'd had soaking in a pot since morning. Nothing that would impress anyone. But I put it together and she ate all of it and didn't remark on what it was. It was only when she handed the tin plate back to me that she said, "I'm Ravine. My husband's ranch is on the other side of the Sangers, west side of Mule Springs Creek." I told her my name was Gideon Cole and that I ran cattle on the Tanner Range, which was 3 miles south of where we were sitting. "The wagon," she said then. "It was Declan Pruitt's wagon. He works for my husband. He was supposed to bring me back from Cimarron." "He throw you?" "He stopped the wagon on the Rimrock Road and told me to get out. I told him I wouldn't. He picked me up and I fought him and he threw me." She said this the same way she'd said everything else. Straight out, no decoration, no hesitation. "He wanted the deed I was carrying. I had it inside my dress. He got it." "Deed to what?" "The East Quarter, 70 acres on the creek. My husband's been trying to buy that piece for 2 years. Pruitt works for the man selling it, works for both of them, I guess. Played both sides of it. The man selling wanted to know what my husband would pay before he named his price." "So Pruitt went through your things?" "He did," she said, "before he threw me." I poured coffee and gave her the cup. She held it with her right hand. "How far back is Cimarron?" I said. "Hour and a half by Wagon on the good road. Longer on this side road." "The deed, it's got your husband's name on it." "Both our names," she said, "Cora and William Vane." I thought about that. The fire popped. Out in the dark, something was moving through the scrub, a deer probably, and my horse lifted his head and then put it back down. "Pruitt going to come back tonight?" I said. "I don't know," she said. "I don't think so. He thinks I'm dead, maybe, or too hurt to matter. He'll be halfway to Cimarron by now." She paused. "Or he'll try to get back to my husband first and tell some story about what happened." That second thing was the worry. A man trying to cover his tracks moves fast and tells his story before anyone else can. "Your husband," I said, "he know you were coming back today." "He expected me by dark," she said. "It's past dark." I looked at the fire, thought about the miles between here and the Vane Ranch, the road quality, the dark. "I can't get you to Mule Springs tonight," I said. "The road's bad in the dark and I don't know it well enough to push it with an injured woman on one horse. Morning we go." She looked at me across the fire, not arguing, just looking. "All right," she said. Then, "You came down into that ravine without knowing what you'd find." I didn't say anything to that. "You could have ridden on," she said. "A lot of men would have." "I heard you in the brush," I said. "That's not what I mean," she said. I looked at her. The fire was between us and her face was lit from below, and she was looking at me with something that wasn't gratitude exactly, or wasn't only gratitude. It was more like the look a person gives a thing they are trying to understand the full shape of. I got up and added wood to the fire and didn't say anything else. I slept light, the way you do when you're responsible for something. The night was cold, got down near freezing the way those high desert nights do even in late September, and I got up twice to put wood on. The second time I got up, she was awake, sitting up with the blanket around her shoulders, watching the fire. "Go back to sleep," I said. "I've been trying," she said. I sat down on my side of the fire, didn't say anything. Sometimes sitting with someone in the dark is enough. Sometimes it's the only thing that is. After a while she said, "My husband's a good man, he works hard, he's not going to believe Prude over me." "I know," I said, though I didn't know. I'd never met either of them. "I'm telling you because I want you to understand why we have to get there before Prude gets his story settled," she said. "It's not about the deed, really. I can describe every word on that deed. It's about William hearing what happened from me first." "We'll go at first light," I said. She nodded, her eyes went back to the fire. "Does it hurt bad?" I said. "The shoulder, yes," she said. "It hurts enough, I've been trying to breathe past it." "I can make a better brace in the morning when I can see what I'm doing," I said. "All right," she said. We sat there another hour, maybe. Her breathing changed eventually, and she was asleep sitting up, the blanket pulled close. I waited until I was sure she was out, and then I eased her back down onto the bedroll and pulled the blanket up, and she didn't wake. I didn't sleep any more after that. I sat with the fire and listened to the night, and thought about the road to Mule Springs, and whether we'd beat Prute's story. Light came slow and cold. I had coffee going before she woke, and she woke to it and sat up and looked around, and then seemed to remember where she was and why. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she said. She stood up on her own, tested the shoulder in the sling, made a small sound and stopped testing it. I had hardtack and the last of the salt pork. We ate without much talking, the kind of breakfast you eat when there's work ahead. I reworked her sling in the morning light with what I had left of the shirt strips, made it tighter, more secure, so the arm wouldn't shift when the horse moved. She stood still for it, her jaw set, looking over my shoulder at the gray sky above the rimrock. "Clouds," she said. "Yes. Rain before noon, maybe." "Maybe," I said. I got her up on the horse, and this time I swung up behind her, her riding in front of me so I could hold the reins on either side and she didn't have to manage the horse with one arm. It was close quarters, but it made sense, and she didn't comment on it. She sat straight, same as the night before. We picked up the road south of the rimrock where it came down off the high country and broadened out toward Mule Springs. The horse was fresh and willing, the clouds the color of pewter moving in from the northwest. We talked some on the road. She told me her people had come from Virginia, that she'd been raised in Santa Fe until she was 12, and then her father had moved the family north into the ranch country. She'd met William Ravine when she was 22, at a cattle sale in Cimarron, and married him that same autumn. "You grew up on ranches," I said. "I grew up in town," she said, "but I learned fast." I believed that. You could tell that about her. The kind of woman who'd fall into a ravine off a high country road and decide, while she was lying against a boulder with a broken collarbone and the light going fast, that she was going to get back up before she asked anyone for help. "You have children?" I said, then immediately felt like that was too personal a thing to ask a woman I'd known less than a day. She didn't seem to think so. "One," she said, "a boy, he'll be 4 in December." "He at the ranch?" "With his father," she said. Her voice changed when she said that, just slightly. The way a voice does when it's saying the one thing that matters most and trying not to show it. The rain came about an hour out, not hard but steady, the kind that soaks through everything given time. I had a slicker in the roll behind the saddle and I got it out and put it around her and she pulled it shut with her good hand. I took the rain, didn't matter. I'd been wet before. She felt me shift behind her and turned her head. "You're going to freeze," she said. "I'll dry," I said. She turned back and I could see the line of her jaw from where I sat, and the set of it hadn't changed. Still straight. Still forward. The Ravine ranch came into sight around a bend in the creek road. A low house long with a good barn and a new-looking loading chute and 4 horses in the near pasture. It was a real working operation, well kept, the kind of place a man had put years of hard work into. You could tell at a distance. A man came out of the barn as we rode up. He was big, sandy-haired, with a limp I noticed even at 30 yards. He stopped when he saw us, and then he covered the ground between us in about 4 strides, that limp and all. "Cora," he said. That was all he said, just her name. He reached up, and she got down into his arms, and he held her careful, feeling where the sling was without her having to tell him to be careful. I stayed up on the horse. It wasn't my moment. He looked at me over her head. He had pale eyes, the kind that seem lighter than they are because everything around them is dark, dark brows, weathered skin, lines from years of looking into the distance. The look he gave me wasn't suspicious. It was the look of a man doing fast accounting on a lot of information at once. "Gideon Cole," I said. "I run cattle on the Tanner Range." "William Vane," he said. "Come inside." I tied the horse at the rail and went in. She told him everything at the kitchen table, the same way she'd told me, straight out in order, nothing left out and nothing put in that wasn't there. He listened without interrupting. The boy was somewhere in the back of the house, and I could hear him playing some small banging sound. A ranch boy's game. When she was done, Vane sat back in his chair and looked at the table. "Prout was here at dawn," he said. "He told me the wagon threw a wheel on the Rimrock Road and you'd gone over." "What did you do?" she said. "I was about to go out looking," he said. "I'd been waiting since first light." He looked at me. "She couldn't have gotten out of that ravine on a broken collarbone." "She was working on it when I got there," I said. He looked at her, a long look. The kind of look you give someone after they've scared you badly enough that you haven't finished being scared yet. Then he looked back at me. "You went down into that ravine in the dark," he said. "It wasn't full dark yet," I said. "But you went down." I didn't say anything to that. He stood up and went to the stove and poured coffee and set it in front of me. Then he went to the cabinet and took down a bottle and set that next to it. Good whiskey, I could tell by the look of the bottle, not the cheap stuff. "Prout's still here," he said. "He's in the bunkhouse. I asked him to stay until we knew what had happened." He looked at me. "I'd like you to be here when I go talk to him." "I'll be here," I said. What came after the talk with Prout, the way that went, what Vane did with it, that's another story and one I'm not going to tell in full. Prout didn't come out of it well. The deed was on him. He'd been carrying it like he thought it was his already. Vane put him off the property and sent word to the sheriff in Cimarron, and I don't know exactly what came of that because I left the next day. But before I left, there was one more thing. It was evening, the day I stayed to help Vane sort out the Prout business. She'd been resting, the shoulder put up proper by Vane, who it turned out had some medical knowledge from his time in the war, and the boy had been running around the kitchen, and she'd been watching him from the doorway to the bedroom with her good hand resting on the doorframe. I came through to get my hat off the peg, getting ready to call it a night and sleep in the barn. She stopped me, not by touching my arm or calling my name. She just stepped slightly into the doorway so I'd have to stop or walk around her, and I stopped. The boy was playing on the floor and wasn't paying either of us any mind. She looked at me the way she'd looked at me across the fire the night before. That looked like she was trying to see the full shape of a thing. "You didn't have to do any of what you did," she said. "The ravine, the camp, the road and the rain, you could have left me at the bottom of that ravine and sent someone back." "No," I said, "I couldn't." She looked at me. "I mean that actually," I said. "I couldn't have done that." "I know," she said. "That's what I mean." She reached up with her right hand, the good hand, and put it flat against my chest for just a second, not holding on. Just placed there the way you touch something to know it's real. Then she took it back. "Thank you, Gideon Cole," she said. I put my hat on and went out. The night was clear after the rain, the way a high desert night gets clear, the sky so full of stars it doesn't look real, looks painted on by someone who didn't know when to stop. The horses were settled in the corral. Somewhere a dog was barking in the direction of the creek. I leaned on the top rail of the corral for a while and smoked and thought about nothing in particular. The kind of not thinking you do when the day has been full enough that your mind doesn't want to chew on anything. In the morning, I saddled up before sunrise, and William Vane came out of the house to see me off. He didn't say a lot. He wasn't a man who said a lot, and neither was I, and we understood that about each other. He handed me an envelope. I don't take pay for that, I said. It's not pay, he said. It's the deed to the East Quarter. You'll see your name on it. I looked at him. 70 acres on the creek, he said. The piece I've been trying to buy, I don't want it anymore. I want you to have it. He paused. A man who goes down into a ravine after a woman nobody else stopped for ought to have a piece of ground that's his. That's my opinion. I stood there a second. That's considerable, I said. Yes, he said, it is. I took the envelope. I didn't open it. I put it in my coat pocket and shook his hand. You need anything on that range, he said. You send word. Same to you, I said. I rode out. The sun was just coming over the sangers, red and flat, the way it comes up out there, like it means something, like it's been thinking about it all night and finally decided to show itself. The scrub was still wet from the rain, and the whole country smelled like sage and wet rock and something clean I don't have a name for. That East Quarter parcel on Mule Springs Creek, I ran cattle on it for 11 years. It was good ground, creek-watered, good grass in the draw. I put a cabin up the second year, nothing much, 1 room and a lean-to, and I lived in it winters when the high range got bad. Every fall I ran cattle past the Vane place. Every fall William Vane would come to the fence line when he saw me, and we'd lean on the rails and talk for a while. Sometimes he'd say, come in for supper, and I would. Cora Vane made good food and kept a clean house, and she never made me feel like a charity case or like there was any debt between us that needed settling. She'd set a place at the table and pour coffee, and the boy, who grew up faster than seemed right, would sit across from me and ask questions about cattle and horses and the high range that I'd do my best to answer. I never married. That's not a complaint, just a fact. There are men built for certain things and not for others, and by the time I was the right age to think seriously about it, I was too set in my ways to be good to anyone except myself and cattle and the occasional dog. But I'll tell you this. There are maybe 3 or 4 moments in a man's life that he carries differently from the others. Not because they're the best moments, sometimes they're not, but because they're the ones that showed him what he was made of when it counted, and no one was watching, and there was no reason to be anything but what he actually was. Hearing that sound in the brush on the rimrock, walking to the edge and looking down. Going over. That's one of them. I don't know that I ever told that to anyone. You don't usually, you just carry it. The way you carry the weight of a rope in your hand, something useful that you know the feel of, that you know you can trust. I still have the deed. It's in a tin box under the floorboard in the cabin, along with some other papers and a photograph and a pocket watch that was my father's. 70 acres on Mule Springs Creek. 2 names on it, mine and Cora Vane's, because she was the buyer and you can't just take a person's name off a deed. And they never asked to change it, and I never asked either. I think about that sometimes, the way things end up being shared that you didn't plan to share. The way a rope, once you've trusted your weight to it, becomes a different thing than it was before. The stars out here on a clear night after rain are still the same as they were that night. I stood at the corral and smoked and thought about nothing. I look at them most evenings. Some things stay the same, that's not nothing.